I've always found people's support for Pete Buttigieg kind of perplexing. It's strange to me that so many people who supported Hillary Clinton for being the most qualified candidate ever are now supporting the former mayor of the 306th largest city in the United States. I mean, we never hear about Mike Mattson, the mayor of Davenport, Iowa, but we do hear an awful lot about Buttigieg. One of those reasons, and for some it's even the main reason, is just how good at school Buttigieg was. After all, he went to Harvard, and he was a Rhodes Scholar. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not as impressive as it sounds. First, a little history. The Rhodes Scholarship was named after its benefactor, Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes was a businessman from England who made his fortune in the Cape Colony, the area of Africa that would eventually become South Africa. After securing a near monopoly over the diamond trade, he became Prime Minister of the Cape Colony. As well as laying the way for apartheid, he founded what would eventually be known as Rhodesia, which, yes, they named after him. He was a bona fide white supremacist and an active colonialist who once said, "Just fancy those parts that are at present inhabited by the most despicable specimens of human beings. What an alteration there would be if they were brought under Anglo-Saxon influence." Cecil Rhodes's actions helped cause and pave the way for untold levels of human misery and suffering. Leaving behind some of his ill-gotten blood diamond fortune doesn't whitewash this. So, congrats on the blood money, Pete. But that's not my main point. Originally, the Rhodes Scholarship allowed for young men from current or former British territories, as well as Germany. This was widened to include women in 1977, and people from the non-Anglo-Saxon world in 2018. Progressive stuff. To assess who should get the scholarships, Rhodes decided on a 200-point scale, which was to measure the young men's literary and scholastic attainments, their success in manly outdoor sports, the qualities of their manhood, such as truth, courage, etc., and his moral force of character. The winners would get a full ride to Oxford. Over the years, those have been changed to the qualities literary and scholastic attainments, energy to use one's talents to the full, most of the same qualities except for manhood, and their moral force of character. And hey, that all sounds fine, doesn't it? Buttigieg got in 2005 after all. I'm sure he got in on merit. Which brings me to one of my favourite articles on the internet, Michael Winnerip's How to Win a Rhodes. The first hint as to how terrible this process is right there in the title. Win a Rhodes. Not earn, but win. There are 32 scholarship spots allocated annually for Americans. To win one, a student must be nominated by their university, approved by their state Rhodes Committee, pass muster at a cocktail party, interview on the state level, and finally, survive a second cocktail party and interview on the regional level. Which is more cocktail parties than one would think would take place when interviewing for an academic scholarship. But going through this rigorous of an interview process is not easy. So colleges have started preparing their students better. Quote, "Going for the Rhodes is way more work than I anticipated," a weary senior, Jeff Sparks, said one day in mid-November, before dragging himself to yet another Rhodes practice interview with faculty members. "I think this is my 10th mock interview." So essentially, getting a Rhodes Scholarship is another form of homework. 10 mock interviews! Who has the time, energy, or inclination for that? Not someone who has to work to support themselves while at college. Not someone who's taking care of a family while studying. You know, the people who might actually need this the most. This article centers on the University of Arkansas Fellowship Advisor, Susan McCrae, and her efforts to get her students the scholarship. She ran those students through what was essentially taking a course on attempting to get the Rhodes. Among the juicy tidbits includes Dr. McCrae giving them lists of questions she pulled from previous interviews, including the astonishing, "You have 1 minute to tell the Prime Minister of India how to end religious violence. What do you say?" Any rational person would say such a thing is impossible. No doubt that rational person does not have the manly vigour wanted for the Rhodes. Dr. McCrae even went as far as scheduling mock cocktail parties for the students to simulate the official ones. She said, "Megan Soronsky, our 2001 Marshall winner, got killed at her Rhodes cocktail party. After that, we decided we would help our kids learn how to handle themselves in tough social situations. It is amazing to me that you would mention a former student by name to a paper of record just to tell them that she was bad at parties. This stuff is forever. You can search that woman on the New York Times database, and it will come up forever that she sucks at parties. It's so mean! There's also a bit where someone brags about outmuscling someone with a baby so he could ask former Rhodes winner Bill Clinton for interview tips. The article then explains that Dr. McRae started this program after realizing that larger, more successful colleges in America all had insider knowledge about the scholarship. They realized programs like Harvard had better infrastructure to advise their students, so state schools like Arkansas upped their game. It worked for a little while in evening out where the scholarships went, until the bigger schools upped their game as well. And there now exists this industry solely to train students on how to interview and go to cocktail parties successfully enough to win, not earn, but win these scholarships. See, it's unbelievably good publicity for a university to have one of their students win a Rhodes. So they pour all of these resources into trying to win them. Resources that I cannot stress enough should be used almost anywhere else. Harvard itself averaged 5.3 Rhodes Scholars a year, and it's not because Harvard has the best and brightest. It's because, among other things, they have the best infrastructure. Also, it reflects well on the Rhodes Committee to bring in people from the prestigious Harvard University, while it also reflects well on Harvard for its students to receive the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship. It's a circle jerk on every level. The process immensely favours students who are A, already at an elite institution, and B, financially well off enough to waste this much time going to mock parties and faux interviews. These scholarships are not always going to our best students and brightest future leaders. If ever. They're going to our most talented ass-kissers. Does that sound like someone you know? I mean, can't you just imagine a young Pete Buttigieg being asked how to solve religious violence in India and responding with something vapid like, "Violence is the answer to a question that we must learn to unask. It is only through open dialogue that we, as a people, can determine how to open our hearts while always guarding our rear flank." It's just such a joke! The article goes on to talk about a young woman named Michelle, the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants, who attended Harvard and volunteered 30 hours a week at a nearby homeless shelter. Michelle found the idea of these faux cocktail parties absurd and did not attend. She was successful regionally and said she was relieved because her parents had taken 2 days off work to take her to the interview and she didn't want to waste their time. But then in the finals she was unsuccessful, after being asked, "Do you really think homeless people are your friends?" and not having a clear enough answer. What does that have to do with her scholastic achievements, energy, or force of character? Very little. My point to all of this is that winning a Rhodes Scholarship does not indicate that someone is particularly well suited to be the head of government. Just ask Australia's Malcolm Turnbull, or Tony Abbott, or America's Bill Clinton, or Bobby Jindal. Seriously, Mayor Pete fans, if you've watched this far, thank you. But also, would you vote for Bobby Jindal? Look up his record and let me know in the comments. In the end, I think the reason this bothers me so much is how manufactured it all is. People go to Harvard not to get the best possible education, but to get a leg up in life. Similarly, people want to be a Rhodes Scholar not because they need the money, but because it looks good on their resume. If you want to go work at McKinsey, being a Rhodes Scholar will get your foot in the door. Within this system, these aren't accolades earned by a hard-working individual. They're won by people with the right connections, the right leg-ups, the right disposition. And that's capitalism. Merely being successful at gaming the broken system does not make you more qualified or worthy to run for office, especially if you're doing so just to keep in place the status quo that has rewarded people like you so unjustly. Please don't vote for Pete Buttigieg. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank my patrons, particularly Kitty Germain, and my new patron, Successful Sisyphus, which is just a great name. If you want to help out the show, you can check me out at patreon.com/hardcorelime, or find me on Twitter @hardcorelime.